Okay, so get this. We're diving into the wild story of Alice Guo, a Filipino mayor accused of, well, just about everything. Espionage, corruption, you name it. We've got her Wikipedia page, a whole bunch of news articles, even some YouTube clips to try and make sense of it all. Ever heard of the My Amnesia Girl memes?
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole thing so intriguing right off the bat.
Yeah.
Even before you get to the accusations, Alice Guo's life story is like a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Right. Like, where was she even born? The Philippines or China? Some reports say she grew up on a farm. Others say it was way more privileged. And don't even get me started on the whole age discrepancy thing. It's a mess.
And that's not even touching the official documents. Her birth certificate, passport history, none of it seemed to line up, so they launched investigations. Plus, there's the question of her residency, where and when she registered to vote. It's almost like, do we even know who Alice Guo is?
Okay, but here's where I get completely lost. You've got these conflicting stories about her past, right? Claims of humble beginnings, and then bam, she's driving around in a GAC GS8, even a McLaren. Those aren't exactly what you'd call starter cars.
Exactly. That's what makes this case so fascinating, that huge contrast. On the one hand, you've got this narrative of a simple life, and on the other, she's living large. Red flag, right? And it doesn't stop there. Her romantic relationships are a whole other mystery.
Oh, tell me about it. There was that whole thing with the live-in partner who was allegedly involved in POGOs. You know, those Philippine offshore gaming operators that have been all over the news. And then there's the close friendship with another mayor. But she's claiming to be single. It's a lot to keep track of.
It really is. And those POGOs, they seem to be at the heart of a lot of the accusations against her.
Yeah, let's talk about that. For those who might not be familiar, what exactly are POGOs?
So basically, they're these online gambling companies, but they're catering to a foreign market. On the surface, they might seem harmless enough, but
But they've become a huge problem in the Philippines.
exactly. They've attracted a lot of shady dealings, organized crime even, and there's a ton of scrutiny and concern around them now.
And Alice Guo is right in the middle of it all.
Front and center. You see, the Senate started investigating a POGO hub in Bamban. That's the municipality Guo was mayor of. And guess what they found?
What? Don't keep me in suspense.
A whole network of companies linked to Guozhou Yuan Technology, Hongsheng Gaming Technology, Baofu Land Development. It's like a spider web.
Wow. So it's not just that she was mayor while this POGO hub was operating. She was directly connected to some of these companies.
You got it. And then you've got testimony from this convicted Chinese criminal, Shi's Zijian, who claimed Guo was a Chinese asset.
Hold on. A Chinese asset? Are we talking espionage now?
That's what they're alleging. The accusation is that she used these POGO connections to exert influence and maybe even funnel information back to China.
This just went from 0 to 60 real fast. We've got questionable finances, a mysterious past, and now potential international intrigue. What did she say when all of this came out?
Well, Guo's defense was basically to distance herself from the entire POGO operation. She said she sold her shares in those companies before going into politics and that she's basically a victim of circumstance.
So who are we supposed to believe? Is she some kind of mastermind pulling strings behind the scenes, or is she just an innocent bystander who got caught up in something much bigger?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I guess that's what the investigation's trying to figure out. But here's the thing. Her next move didn't exactly scream innocent.
You're talking about how she pulled off that escape because she had an immigration lookout bulletin order against her, which basically means they were watching for her, and she still managed to vanish from the Philippines. I mean, it's like something out of a movie. One minute she's facing these serious accusations, and the next, poof, she's gone. Did she fly out, sail away? Some reports even said she went through a bunch of different countries before ending up in Indonesia.
It's wild, right? And we still don't have all the details on how she actually pulled it off.
You're telling me it's like every time you think you've got a handle on this story, there's another twist.
Oh, and did I mention? While she was on the run, her sister Sheila Guo and this business associate, Cassandra Ong, they got arrested.
Seriously. Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got possible POGO connections, accusations of being a foreign agent, and a daring escape. You couldn't make this stuff up. But they did eventually catch up to her in Indonesia and deported her back to the Philippines, right?
And they did.
Yeah.
But remember how I said there was more to Alice Guo's story than just her escape? Well, the September 24th hearing, that's where things went from intriguing to like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Oh, I'm ready for this. Spill the tea.
Okay, so this hearing, it focused on a POGO hub in Lapu-Lapu City.
Okay.
And the main player in this part of the story is a guy named Tony Yang, also known as Antonio Maestrado Lim. He's an interesting character.
Tony Yang. Why does that name ring a bell?
Well, Tony here just happens to be the nephew of Michael Yang, that businessman who's been in the news lately for his own alleged POGO connections.
Oh, right. I knew I'd heard that name somewhere. It's like we walked into a family reunion.
Seriously. So, get this. During the hearing, Tony Yang just comes right out and admits it. He's a Chinese national who made up a whole Filipino identity so he could do business in the Philippines.
He what? Wait, like completely fabricated a Filipino persona?
Yep. Said his Filipino birth certificate was fake, that he was actually born in China. And get this. He reveals he was involved in a POGO linked to Bam Bam. You know, Alice Guo's old stomping grounds.
Hold up. Fake identities, illegal gambling, and now we're possibly talking about a whole network of powerful people involved. This is like The Departed, but in real life.
Right, and it just goes to show how deep this whole thing might go. But hold on, we're not done yet. Let's talk about Cassandra Ong, Alice Guo's business associate, the one who was arrested.
Oh, right. Cassandra Ong. What did she have to say for herself?
Well, she testified at that September 24th hearing, but honestly, she didn't give up much, kept pleading the fifth. Smart move, probably. But she did reveal some interesting details about this company, Whirlwind Corporation.
Whirlwind Corporation. Okay, I've got nothing. Who are they?
So they're this real estate company, right? And they bought up this massive chunk of land, 10 hectares in Porac, Pampanga.
Let me guess, another POGO hub.
Ding, ding, ding. But here's the real kicker. Cassandra Ong, who was only 19 years old at the time, she was appointed as the company's corporate secretary and treasurer. And get this, she owned 58% of the company.
Whoa, hold on. A teenager with a majority stake in a company that just bought 1 billion pesos worth of land. Something doesn't add up.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
It's super sketchy. And it gets even better. Apparently, she'd never even filed a tax return.
Okay, yeah, that's beyond suspicious. What's her excuse? How did she explain all of this?
Well, according to her, it was all thanks to her godfather, this guy named Guan Wu. Apparently, he introduced her to the company after her mom died and kind of took her under his wing.
Yeah, that sounds a little too convenient. Like maybe she's a front for someone else's dealings.
Bingo. That's exactly what investigators are looking into. And her story adds a whole other layer of messed up to this POGO situation, right? We're not just talking about illegal gambling and corruption, but potentially exploiting a young woman.
This is getting darker by the minute. So what are they actually doing about all of this in the Senate?
Well, they're not letting it go, I can tell you that. They're planning on calling in some big names for the next hearing, including people from something called the Philippine Business for International Cooperation.
Okay, why that group? What's the connection?
They want to get to the bottom of how these POGO companies actually work, who's running this show, are any government agencies looking the other way, or even helping them out. The whole 9 yards.
Sounds like this next hearing could be huge.
No kidding. And maybe, just maybe, we'll finally get some answers about Alice Guo.
Fingers crossed. Because remember that whole escape she pulled off? Well, the September 24th hearing, it turns out they have some new info on that too.
Oh yeah? Like what?
So the Bureau of Immigration, they shared their working theory, and granted this is still being investigated, but they think she might have actually skipped out of the Philippines by sea.
By sea, you mean like on a boat?
Maybe even a yacht. Talk about making a grand exit. It's giving more international spy thriller, less on the run mayor.
Right, and it looks like her passport had stamps showing she entered Kuala Lumpur on July 18th and then Sabah, Malaysia on July 19th.
So maybe she sailed from the Philippines to Malaysia and then took it from there. But how did she manage to get past authorities with that immigration lookout bulletin order in place? They were supposed to be watching for her.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The Senate, they're especially interested in whether any government officials helped her escape.
Because that wouldn't be a shock, sadly.
Nope. And if that turns out to be true, well, that's a whole other level of corruption we're talking about.
Absolutely. It just shows you how important transparency and accountability are. But going back to Alice Guo, did she say anything about the escape during this hearing? Did she give any kind of explanation?
She did, but her answers were vague, to say the least. Claimed she received death threats, felt unsafe in the Philippines, and that's why she left so suddenly.
But no details on who was threatening her or anything?
Nope, not a single one. And she wouldn't say who might have helped her escape either, just kept saying she did it all on her own.
Right, because that's totally believable when you're talking about international travel and trying to avoid getting caught.
Exactly. It's like she's still playing some kind of game.
Well, hopefully the investigation will get some real answers. But this hearing, it wasn't all about Alice Guo's escape. Senator Jingoy Estrada, he brought up some pretty interesting stuff about Mayor Liseldo Keligay. Remember the Shul mayor who was linked to Guo?
Oh, yeah, what about him? Did they find something?
Well, Senator Estrada, he presented documents showing that a bunch of construction projects in Seoul were awarded to this company, BT Construction. Any guesses who owns 70% of that company?
Let me guess it's someone related to the mayor.
You got it. None other than Garly Macaronis, Mayor Caligay's common-law wife.
Well, well, well. Talk about a conflict of interest.
Right, and to make matters worse, those projects were awarded without going through a proper bidding process.
So we're talking potential corruption, abuse of power. It never ends, does it?
Nope.
And Senator Estrada, he was not letting it slide. He straight up accused Mayor Caligay of lying about his connections to BT Construction and his influence over the barangay captains in Shual.
That's calling him out. How did he respond to that?
What do you think? He said he was innocent, of course, claimed he has no controls over what the barangay captains do, and that everything with those BT Construction contracts was totally legit.
Right, but it doesn't look good, does it? His common-law wife owning the majority of the company that's getting all these contracts, it just stinks.
It does. And something tells me this investigation isn't over yet. It's like every time we turn around, there's another layer, another person, another scandal. I need to take notes just to keep track of everyone involved, honestly.
I know, right? It's a lot to take in. And it really makes you wonder, like, zoom out for a second. What does this whole thing tell us? About the Philippines, about the government, about everything?
That's a big question. What are you getting at?
Well, we've been so deep in the weeds with Alice Guo and her story, but this case really touches on some major issues, like there's a lot of anxiety right now about Chinese influence in the Philippines.
Yeah, the whole POGO thing, right?
Exactly. Because on paper, yeah, they're legal. But there's this growing feeling that they're not what they seem, that they're attracting crime, that they're giving China way too much power here.
And Alice Guo, with all these alleged ties to POJOs and people in China, she becomes kind of a symbol for all that fear and uncertainty.
Right. I mean, guilty or not, her story just plays into those anxieties people already have.
It also begs the question, how does she get to be mayor in the first place with all these red flags?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Because this case, it exposes what a lot of people see as weaknesses in the government, Is there enough oversight? Are there loopholes that are letting this stuff happen? These are big questions Filipinos are asking right now.
So it's bigger than just Alice Guo. It's about trust, right?
Exactly. People want answers, and they want someone to be held accountable.
Okay, so let's say that happens. What's next? What's the end game for Alice Guo?
Well, she's got a long road ahead of her, that's for sure. Graft, corruption, human trafficking, tax evasion, those are serious charges.
Yeah, we're not talking about a slap on the wrist here.
Nope. If she's found guilty, we could be talking years, maybe even decades behind bars.
Big if, though, right? Because with everything we've learned, do you really think the whole truth is ever going to come out?
That's a tough one. I mean, even with the Senate hearings, the investigations, the trial, there's no guarantee that everything will come to light. Some things might stay hidden.
That's true. I guess sometimes you just never really know.
Right. But I think what matters more than knowing every little detail is understanding what this whole situation tells us about the Philippines, about the future.
What do you mean?
Think about it. This whole case, it started a conversation, right? About money in politics, about weaknesses in the system, about foreign influence. Those are things that aren't going away anytime soon, even if Alice Guo disappears from the headlines tomorrow.
So it's bigger than just her. It's about where the Philippines goes from here.
Exactly. And that's something we should all be thinking about.
Well said. This case, it's been a wild ride, that's for sure. And something tells me this isn't the last we'll hear of it. But for now, that wraps up our deep dive into the strange